Back to Matthew 26. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." Taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful, troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, the flesh is weak." It's hard not to judge Peter and the disciples here. That is, unless you've ever experienced great fatigue. I'm not going to speculate as to why they were so tired, but stress will exhaust people, and I'm sure the wine they had at dinner didn't help much either. Instead of guessing the cause of their fatigue, I will instead blame their fatigue as a contributing factor in their falling away. The military uses sleep deprivation as a sifting process as well. It is amazing how quickly the things we think are important to us lose all meaning when we are hungry, and even more so when we are exhausted. How many times have you dedicated yourself to a task that you thought was really important at the moment, but later were just too tired to even bother? Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass until I drink it, your will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep, and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. My betrayer is at hand." We covered that fatigue is often the cause of falling. Vince Lombardi accurately quipped, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." But Jesus gave us a secret of not falling. Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. We are least likely to fall while we are clinging to Jesus, be that him talking to us in his word or us talking to him in prayer. While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I kiss is the man. Seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Greetings, Rabbi." And he kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servants of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled that it must be so?" At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching. You did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled. Peter is always the focus of this tale, but an interesting aspect of why Peter was pretty much made the leader of the group after Jesus' ascension is because he is a doer. Granted, maybe someone accused him of having impulse control issues, but assertiveness and conviction sometimes appears the same as recklessness. However, if we go back to verse 35, when Peter says to him that even if I must die with you, I will not deny you, it wasn't just Peter. He's the one who broke the ice, but all the disciples said the same. Same goes here. We all know that it was Peter who cut off Malchus's ear, but he isn't just an impetuous wild man. Per Luke 22:49, all were armed, and all asked if they should strike. What differentiates the leader, Peter, from the followers, the rest of the disciples, is that he doesn't ask, he just acts. Earlier, I said that when Peter swore that he would not betray Christ, it wasn't overconfidence, nor him questioning Christ. I believe it was the beginning of the sifting process, and Peter was questioning himself. Stephen Curtis Chapman has a great line in a song which goes, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, but sometimes I wonder what he can do through me. Peter heard what Jesus said about needing to sacrifice himself, but emotionally and mentally, he can't quite process what that means. His best friend, his teacher, his master, his Savior, the Son of God, who he personally saw in his glory at the Transfiguration, had just told him that he was about to die. How could Peter possibly process all that? He was on information overload. He didn't seek fame or notoriety. He had been content as a fisherman, but had given up everything to follow the Messiah. All that was about to end. He was probably terrified about what was next. His declaration that he would never betray Jesus was likely more to convince himself than Christ. He had been told in front of the others that he would indeed betray his Lord, and then fell asleep when he was asked to give Jesus support during his turmoil in Gethsemane. Is it really a surprise that he would draw his sword and strike out violently in defense of the Lord? The problem was that Jesus didn't need Peter to lead yet. In this instance, he needed him to follow. Peter obviously wasn't following God's stated plan. I covered this in part 1, but this is not a general call for pacifism in all circumstances. Just a few hours earlier, Jesus admonished all the disciples to become armed, and here in the garden, they were. The issue, and this goes back to predestination, is that this was not the plan. It was all foreordained that God was going to strike the shepherd and scatter the flock so that Isaiah 53 could be fulfilled.